Sorry, I got interrupted there. Sorry about that. So we got to the point where we found the antiderivative. Now remember, we need to plug in -2 and 1. Remember, the 1 goes in first. Now the 1, that's nice because it's just going to leave us 2 minus 1/3 minus 1/2. Easy peasy. Then this, though, will have a minus, and now we got to plug in that -2. So if we plug in -2 here, we're going to have -4. If we plug in -2 here, we're going to have -8, but that's going to turn that into a positive. So positive 8/3. And then we have -2 here is going to be +4, but still with this negative out front, so -4/2. And then we'll see what we can do simplifying. So that's just a fancy way of saying 2. Okay, so we have 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Everybody see the 8 there? 8. So that got rid of all of those. Now we have -1/3 minus 8/3, so that's going to be -9/3. And then we just have this -1/2. So that's just a fancy way of saying 3. So this is going to be 5 minus 1/2. So that's 10/2 minus 1/2, which is 9/2, or 4.5. So we have found that this area is 9/2. Okie dokie. So again, remembering that it's a subtraction and remembering which function is above the other function. Don't just got caught up on the one they wrote first or the one they wrote second. You have to check it each time. Now, as I said, we have a word problem in this situation. So we definitely want to look at that. So in business, the place where you use this is with consumer. Actually, which way did they? I'll make sure I write it. Yeah, consumer and producer surplus. Okay, so when you're producing a product, and again, you guys know this far better than I do, when you're producing a product, you have both a demand function and a supply function. You have the demand function telling you price and units of what the consumers are demanding, but you also have the supply function, again, telling price and units of what the producer can actually supply. So with demand and supply functions. Now the idea is that there normally is an equilibrium price. There's a price where demand and supply are equal. And that, I guess, is ideal. I guess you guys in business will understand more what you're actually looking at. But sometimes we're not selling or we're not producing at this equilibrium. And that's what gives us consumer or producer surplus. So consumer surplus surplus is the difference between what a consumer would pay or so let's say would be willing to pay and what they actually pay. So as an example, I just bought the new Apple earbuds that have the squishy ends because the old earbuds that Apple had, they hurt my ears, and so I didn't spend the money on that. But those new earbuds, they were for sale for $230. Well, $230 was more than I was willing to spend. So there's a difference between what a person is willing to spend and what they actually have to pay. So I was willing to spend, because as I said, I just bought them on Black Friday, I was willing to spend $189, and I probably would have spent $199 as well. I would have been okay with either one of those. So what I actually paid was $189, but I was willing to pay $199. So there was a $10 surplus, lucky me, okay, that I was able to get away with. But that's the idea here, is that you don't always pay exactly what you want to pay. Sometimes you're not willing to buy something, or sometimes the producer isn't willing to produce something for a certain price. Okay, so that's consumer surplus. Producer surplus is the difference between, okay, now let's get caught up. Again, you guys deal with this more than I do. The difference between the amount the producer receives how do you spell receives? Sorry, brain fart there. The amount the producer receives and the amount they were willing to receive. Okay, so the idea there is that the producer is going to produce the product, and certainly the producer would like to make a hefty profit on it. So there's the amount the producer actually receives, but there was also like a base amount that the producer was willing to receive. And that's kind of like when you put things on sale, that's going down to that kind of base amount. So what was the producer willing to receive besides what they were actually selling it for? And there's a little bit of a difference there. Okay, so with those two things written out, and again, as I said, in your business classes, you will definitely look in that far more than I have. But with these written out, thinking about them versus demand and supply gives us a graph. So when we look at this, this is going to be X, and this is P, because we're talking about a demand and supply function. So X units and P price. The demand function is here, and the supply function is here. Okay, so we're going to have these two functions, and they are going to intersect each other, and they give us a bounded region. Now, this point right here is equilibrium, not with a G. Equilibrium. This is the price and the number of units that is the same for both producer and consumer. As we said, we don't always reach that equilibrium price, but that is the equilibrium price. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line straight over like this. Okay, and this we are going to label our X sub 0 for equilibrium. And this one we're going to label our P sub 0 also for equilibrium. Now, what we've done is we've split this bounded region into two separate regions. This one that's between the demand function and the equilibrium, this area right here is consumer surplus. Between the demand and the equilibrium, what the consumers are demanding and what the equilibrium price is, that's the consumer surplus. Below here is the producer surplus. So the area between the equilibrium and the supply function, what the producers are supplying, that is the producer surplus. So consumer surplus and producer surplus. And because those are both bounded areas, it means that we can use an integral to find those areas. So let me give you an example here. If demand and supply for a product is demand equals, or demand not equals, but demand, P equals negative 0.2x plus 8, and supply is P equals 0.1x plus 2, where P is in dollars and X is in millions. Find consumer and producer surplus. Okay, so the functions are going to change each time, but essentially the graph, well, the lines or the curves might be a little bit different. The graph is still going to be the same setup, so we don't need to regraph it each time. It's still the same idea here. This is the demand function, this is the supply function. Now, they're asking us to find consumer surplus first. Well, they're asking us to find both, but consumer surplus first. So as we look at the graph, we notice that we're going to use the demand function, but the lower boundary is not the supply function, is it? The lower boundary is this equilibrium price. So we need to figure out, this is very important to us, okay? We need to figure out what that point is. So just like in the last example, we need to figure out where they intersect each other. So what are we going to do first with the demand and the supply to find the equilibrium? We're going to set them equal to each other. So equilibrium we'll say negative 0.2x plus 8 will equal 0.1x plus 2. So let's see, I'm going to add these guys over here and subtract that. So that's going to be 6, and this will be 0.3x. So when we divide by 0.3, we're going to get 20. Okay. And if you don't trust me, you can always calculate it out, right? 6 divided by 0.3, yep, 20. So that's this down here, but we need the P over here because that's going to be our lower boundary. So we need to take that 20 and we need to plug it back. Now it's going to work in either one, so we need to take it and plug it into either one. So we can say price equals, let's go with this guy, 0.1 times 20 plus 2, right? And the 0.1 times 20 should give us just 2, plus 2 more gives us 4. So we get a price of $4. Now that goes right here. That is our equilibrium line there. So when we go to set up, so we've got 20 here, 4 there. When we go to set up our consumer surplus, we're going to look at the integral that goes from 0 all the way to the equilibrium point, which is 20. So we're going to go from 0 to 20. And then we want the demand function minus the equilibrium. So our demand function was negative 0.2x plus 8 minus the equilibrium, which was 4 dx. Okay, so there are the two. We're doing the subtraction problem. Demand minus equilibrium, which if we simplify, we're going to have 0 to 2 of negative 0.2x plus 4 dx. So antiderivative now, we will have negative 0.2x squared over 2 plus 4x. And remember that this is going from 0 to 2. So if we plug 2 in there, okay, if we plug 2 in there, we'll have negative 0.4 plus, plug 2 in there is 8. Okay. And when we subtract, what happens when we plug in 0? It just is a big old fat 0, isn't it? Which is really nice. So what we end up with is negative 0.4 plus 8, which is 7.6, and of course I ran myself out of space, 7.6. Now this is in dollars, okay? So, hold on. Yeah, this is in dollars, I'm sorry. So $7.60. Boop, boop. Okay, sorry about that. That's our consumer surplus. Now we're not done because they also want producer surplus. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to erase this part down here so we can find the producer surplus. Now, luckily we already have the equilibrium, so we already have the 20 and the 4, so we just need to set up the integral now. So we're still going from 0 to 20, but this time we're looking at the space bounded by the equilibrium down to the supply, which means we're going to start with the 4 and we're going to subtract the supply. Okay, so this time the 4 comes first because it's the higher of the boundaries, and then this is the lower one. So again, when we simplify here, we have the integral from 0 to 20. That'll be 2 minus 0.1x dx. So we'll have 2x minus 0.1. Hold on. Let's finish this one, then we'll go back and fix that one. Now I realized what I did wrong there. Hold on, sorry about that. Let's finish this one. Okay, so 0.1x squared over 2. But we're going from 0 to 20. Okay, so we need to plug in 20 there. Hi, handsome. So that's going to be 40, right? Plug in 20 there. Minus 0.1 times 20 squared over 2. Okay, and then if we plug in 0, we just get minus 0. Okay, so let's see. I got $20. So we've got a producer surplus of $20. Now, hold on a second, come back over here. I knew there was something wrong with this, but I couldn't figure out what it was. erase, let's erase, let's erase. 20, yeah. Sorry about that. So I knew there was a problem. We're not plugging in 2, we're plugging in 20. So negative 0.2 times 20 squared over 2 plus 80. All right, now let's see. Negative 0.2 times 20 squared divided by 2 plus 80. There, that looks so much better, is $40. So sorry about that, guys. These things happen. This is when it would be nice to have you guys in class, because then you could be like, hey, bonehead, you forgot something. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. Okay, so the consumer surplus is $40 and the producer surplus is $20. All right, I think you probably want to be done. So just remember that this is always the same process. Like I said, the graphs themselves might change their shape a little bit, but the setup never does. Consumer surplus, producer surplus, equilibrium, point. Okay? So you need to find that equilibrium, and then you set up the two areas and find the definite integral. All right, so good job. Sorry for the mix-up. All right, bye-bye.